What makes a piece of music sound romantic? Is it melody, or is it harmony, or is it just a combination of the two? Honestly, the answer to this question just isn't very straightforward at all. So for Valentine's Day of 2024, I've challenged 5 composers to help us figure this out. So I'm going to play and analyze parts of each composition, and I'm going to go over what attributes I feel help create these deep emotions. So if you're curious about how harmony works in music, I'll be giving you an entry-level introduction to harmony using these practical examples. But what makes this topic even more fascinating is that the simplest form of music is literally just a sine wave. So in fact, just for fun, here's a demonstration of my voice being broken up into the smallest unit. Here's a demonstration of my voice being broken up. Unstructured sine waves may also sound like this. In fact, it's very similar to the slur that we discussed in the last video. But when you structure all of these sine waves using something called the equal temperament tuning system, composers can work within this structure and use these tones to create unlimited soundscapes and emotions. So as to why we respond so well to structured music, this has always been a fascinating topic to me. But with the help of 5 composers who compose music specifically for this challenge, maybe we can get a little closer to solving this mystery. So then what makes music sound romantic? This Nocturne by Lewis is a great example to start with, because he took the time to label all of his harmony. So let's find out if melody or harmony is responsible for giving us the correct mood. And since this piece has very clearly labeled harmony, I'm going to play just the harmonies of each page after playing the composition. And I'm going to do this to emphasize how important harmony in music is. Also, when we change harmonies in music like this, we call this modulation. So this exercise will show you exactly what modulation in music is. And I actually wonder how many people actually pay attention to their modulations during the composition process. Anyway, since this is not specifically a tutorial on harmony, I'm gonna just quickly go over the first page with you. So what these chord symbols mean is this. We have B flat major modulating to the second inversion of D minor. Okay, so here's D minor in root. And when we play a chord in root, we start with D. Then here's the first inversion, starting with F sharp. And then here's the second inversion, which starts with A. And inversions are literally the same chord, but the notes are just rearranged differently. And then we modulate to A diminished 7th. And that's what this symbol here means. So I'll explain what A diminished 7th is at the end of this video. Okay, so now let's listen to the composition followed by just the modulations. My opinion is that harmony is in fact critical in making a piece sound romantic. However, the structure and melody of the piece is really what makes this an actual composition and not just a chord study. So what do you think though? Do you think that harmony plays a role in making this piece sound romantic, or do you think the melody and the rhythms play a role? Before moving on to the next submission, this channel is all about the art of music composition, and I'm very unhappy with the music editors on the market today. And this is the reason why I'm creating MusicJotter, which is an easy to use music editor for both the hobbyist and the professional. Here's a glimpse at how powerful this software is. Let's add slurs that group these notes by 6 or 12. Now let's change the time signature. As we change the time signature, notice how the slur maintains its integrity. So I'm demonstrating to you how the musical slur retains its integrity even when the notes shift. If you want to support MusicJotter as a channel or a software, don't forget to like and subscribe. You may also support this channel by becoming a member over at my Buy Me a Coffee page. The next submission by Vince is called Lavender Hands, which is also performed by Vince. And I want you to pay very close attention to the harmonies in this piece, because the harmonies that Vince chooses to use are fascinating. The modulations in this guitar solo are very smooth and they also sound natural. I also think there's quite a bit of tension in this composition. I'm going to play back just the chord progressions so that you can get a better sense of how modulations work in a guitar solo. So I think seeing the chord names and listening to just the harmony is a great step in learning how to write music. So as we listen through, I'm going to rewind and point out some harmonies that I find interesting. And the harmony in this guitar solo, in my opinion, is the clear winner and factor in determining the overall mood of this piece. The melody and the structure, along with the dynamics and tempo of this piece, is of course what makes this composition. But we can't ignore the excellent harmonies in this guitar solo piece. The next piece is by Brandon, which is called In Flanders Fields. So let's just admire the beauty of this score, because it's gigantic. As we listen through this music, it's almost immediate that Brandon is favoring the use of rhythm, dynamics, and melody in order to create a specific mood. And in my opinion, melody is much more prominent in this piece than in the previous pieces we've heard so far. And I think harmony relies on tension and release in this piece. And there are definitely some interesting harmonies here though. But I think the main attraction is the melody, the atmosphere, and the dynamics. And what I mean by this is that the combination of these elements is more aligned with storytelling. And Brandon himself tells us that this piece is about losing someone in the military. And I think it's very clear that we can hear this emotion in the music. So the end of this piece is what I want to specifically point out. We haven't spoken about chord progressions or cadences on this channel yet, but without getting too much into detail about that, a cadence is music that sounds like it has finished its thought. So here's an example of a cadence. And an unfinished cadence is music that sounds like it just hasn't completed its thought yet. So let's hear an example of that now. So now if we listen carefully to the ending of Brandon's composition, you're going to notice that he ends the piece with an unfinished cadence, which contributes to the mood of this beautiful piece. Next, we have Piano Sonata No. 5 by Jonathan, and the opening of this sonata by Jonathan is very dramatic. And the reason why it sounds dramatic has a lot to do with the chosen harmonies. I can hear almost a sadness to this music. I suppose Valentine's Day doesn't always have to mean happiness. However, the mood of this piece will drastically change when we enter this march-like style here. And I'd like to point out that the repeat of this march has a completely new mood, strictly due to the harmony. So let's actually do a compare and contrast. You'll notice that this is the same exact theme. However, now we have two completely different moods, and we owe these mood changes to harmony. There's also a second movement here that I want to take a look at. Let's look at the opening chords in the left hand. So I'm going to get a little technical here. We have a B flat major 7th, which greatly contributes to the romantic style mood of this piece. And just real quick, basically a B flat major 7th is literally just a B flat major chord with a major 3rd interval added to it. So as an example, here's the B flat major chord. Now all we have to do is add this major 3rd interval, and we get this nice sounding harmony. So again, in my opinion, the harmony in this piece really contributes to the romantic style of this piece. And finally, we have Romance for Piano and String Orchestra by Ferrum. Let's get right into it. The opening is heavily driven by harmony, but within this intro, we actually do hear a melody. Let me point that out to you. But as we get deeper into this composition, we can actually start to realize that this piece is not only driven by a melody, but it's also driven by a motif. And we've spoken about motifs before on this channel. Here's a quick reminder of what a motif is. A motif is a short collection of notes that are often repeated throughout a composition in order to trigger a specific mood. The note pitches must be similar in rhythms, and as you can see with Beethoven's motif throughout the symphony, the motif is always 3/8 notes followed by another note of equal or longer duration. And here's a reminder of what a melody is. It's a voice in composition that should consist of more than a few notes so that it has a solid identity, and generally this identity will have a pattern. So it's not quite the same as a motif, where a motif without any context really won't sound like anything. So let's listen to sections of this piece, and when we get to the motifs, I'm going to point them out to you in red highlights. And then when we get to the melody sections, I'll point them out to you in green. Since this piece is 17 minutes long, I urge you to listen to the full piece, which I linked in the description below. This piece tells a story, and we have many elements of romanticism in this beautiful composition. The storytelling is actually one aspect of this, in my opinion, but harmony, melody, motifs, and a general overall mood of this piece contribute to this emotion as well. So I did promise you earlier that I would go over what A diminished seventh means in harmony. So the letter A just means we are in the key of A, which could be either A major or A minor, but in this case, we're assuming A major. And A7 just means we add a minor third to the chord. So this chord extends 7 intervals. In order to quickly demonstrate what A7 stands for, I'm actually going to go over the C major scale since it's just easier to demonstrate what an interval is. So C7 is exactly the same as A7, we're just in the key of C. So in this case, we're going to look at all of the white keys on a piano. From C to C, we have a scale, and each key in the scale is called an interval. When we look at C to B, this would be 7 intervals, or a seventh. Or if we look at C to E, this is going to be a major third interval. So if we go back 1/2 step, then we have a minor third. So still a third, but it's a minor third. So this is called the quality of the interval. And C indicates that we are in C major, which would be the keys C, E, and G by definition. And C7 by definition will extend this chord by a minor third interval. So we know that C7 is literally just the C major chord with an added minor third at the end. But what does C diminished 7 mean? Well, diminished just means to reduce each note by a 1/2 step. And this type of harmony is actually used by Debussy and Ravel in their Impressionism. But if used in moderation, romantic music can also take advantage of this type of harmony as well. So when we say A diminished seventh, we're saying A major with a minor third, but now we're going to subtract the rest of the notes in the chord by another 1/2 step. So this is a quick tutorial, but the key to understanding basic harmony is really to understand your intervals. So if there's enough interest in this topic, let me know, because I have the resources to go over these types of topics in great detail, and I can also use original music to demonstrate my points. As you can see, harmony plays a critical aspect in making a piece of music sound romantic. Melody, rhythm, technique, and even motifs can play vital roles as well. So if you'd like to learn more about the motif, I've got the perfect video for you right here. And if you're interested in supporting MusicJotter in some way, then this video is also for you. I'll see you next time.